Okay, good evening. Dr. Dibyendu Khan is one of the prominent cardiac anesthetists in our city. And he is one of those persons who uses double lumen tube and lung separation a lot because of the type of surgeries that he conducts. And he has taken classes on the similar topic a number of times as well. Now, this is a very important topic for postgraduates, and I'm sure a large number of seniors would also love to get their knowledge refreshed and get new inputs. So, Dibyendu, please take over from here.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Paulasda, for a lovely introduction.
Dibyendu, please turn your video on. It's an icon just to the left of the microphone.
Yeah. Yeah. Good evening, everybody.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulasda, for a lovely introduction. Today, we will be talking about double lumen tubes and bronchial blockers. We'll just try to brush through as much as we can over the webinar. Though this is more of a hands-on practice is more recommended. Double lumen tube and bronchial blockers. This is one of the very common gadgets or a hardware which is used for during one lung ventilation, which is used for mainly commonly for thoracic surgery. And
just one second. Just click that hide button. Just to the right of that sharing, there's a hide button.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
So first I'll be talking about double lumen tubes and then bronchial blockers. Okay. Before we start looking into the double lumen tubes and bronchial blockers, which we used for thoracic surgery and also cardiothoracic surgery, where we need one lung ventilation, we need to brush up about a bronchial anatomy. This is just a very schematic diagram which shows how the tracheobronchial tree, the more of it is the measurement and how does it divide into two different segments. First of all, we can see the approximate diameter in a adult male patient of 170 centimeter height is the diameter is around approximately average is 19 millimeter, and then it divides into the left mainstem bronchus and the right mainstem bronchus. The left mainstem bronchus further divides into the upper lobe bronchus and the left lower lobe bronchus, giving off into its own branches of the lobes particularly. And the most marked thing about knowing in this bronchial anatomy is the total number of segments we have, and also the very important thing is the difference between the left mainstem bronchus and the right mainstem bronchus, which is very much important. Why we need to know is because if you want to isolate the left lung or the right lung, there are a lot of issues which I will be talking about, but the reason is all behind is this bronchial anatomy. That is left mainstem bronchus, as you see, is lengthier than the right mainstem bronchus, and taking off the right upper lobe bronchus, which is very close to from the carina. So these are the two issues we need to have in mind always, and this has to be there also, that we need to also identify the taking off of the right upper lobe bronchus, which looks like a clover leaf appearance in a endobronchial or through a bronchoscopy anatomy. So which has to be identified when we do a bronchoscopy. So further anatomical few features are trachea usually bifurcates at the level of the fifth thoracic vertebra. The left mainstem bronchus approximate length is between 5 to 5.5 centimeter between male and female, and the right mainstem bronchus length is around 1.5 to 2 centimeter. Now there are some anomalies which is usually seen is the direct origin sometimes of the right upper lobe bronchus can be taken up from the trachea, which is can be seen in 1 in 250 normal subjects or 1 in 50 patients with coming for associated congenital cardiac diseases. So this is sometimes called a pig bronchus, which we need to also have in mind, because any anomaly should not be mistaken as a carina, or taking of the right mainstem bronchus earlier before the carina has to be also dealt while we are initiating one lung ventilation. This is another diagram which shows the bronchoscopy view in the different positions. So at the tip of the carina, as you can see in the top of the picture, you get to see the two mainstem bronchus, the left and the right. Now the left mainstream bronchus is usually more oblique taking off rather than the right, as we can see. And it's more, the left mainstream bronchus is more angulated. That is another very important feature. So that's why it's more easier for intubation. Endobronchial intubation is more often more easier to the right than the left. But for practical purpose, for when we are going ahead and initiating one lung ventilation, we prefer to go for left lung isolation, because of the features of the more angulation of the left mainstem bronchus, and we have a lengthier left mainstem bronchus. That is called the margin of safety, which we'll be talking about in the later half. Now, the another anatomy is looking at the right upper lobe bronchus. Now, here you can see the right upper lobe bronchus in the left side of the screen, the top screen. This is look like a classical clover leaf appearance. So this we need to really identify, because bronchial anatomy, when we are placing any double lumen tube or a blockers, we always identify the carina, and then we go for the next step is the right upper lobe bronchus. So we know that that side is the right bronchus and the other side should be the left main bronchus. Now, this is a video of a bronchial anatomy, how it looks like when we do a bronchoscopy through a ET tube. You can see we are passing the bronchoscope through an endotracheal tube. You can see the blue line. Now, at the end of the ET tube, when we come out at the end of the ET tube, you can prominently see the carina, and that's what I'm talking about. The left mainstream bronchus is more oblique, and whereas the right mainstream bronchus is less oblique, and you can get to see at the position of 2 o'clock, you can see the right upper lobe bronchus taking off. And this is the both right middle lobe and the lower lobe bronchus taking off from the right mainstem bronchus. Now you can. So now how do we identify a left mainstem bronchus? From the carina, we push in the bronchoscope into the left mainstem bronchus, and now while we go through it, you can see it's the left mainstem bronchus is more lengthier, and we at the end of the left mainstem bronchus, you get to see the left upper lobe bronchus and the left lower lobe bronchus. Now about the right bronchus identification, as I told, you can see the right upper lobe bronchus, which has got the clover leaf appearance, is taking off very early, and there is very less safety of margin. That is what we call the safety of margin. That is the amount of the right mainstem bronchus which we have before taking off any other branching of the bronchus. And here we can see the right lower lobe and the middle lobe bronchus also. So this is how, what are the indications of double lumen tube? Grossly, there are lots of indications. Now in the left side, you can see if you go for a right upper lobe lobectomy, you can go ahead for a double lumen tube. Any patients who are coming for lung abscess, this is a very strong indication for using a double lumen tube. Now, just brushing up, what are the specific indications for lung isolation with use of DLT? If you want to protect the one lung from a contralateral contamination, like in cases with patients having lung abscess, lung cyst, pulmonary hemorrhage, or bronchopulmonary lavage is required, and in cases where pulmonary alveolar proteinosis. And also when you want control and continuity of the airway gas exchange, like in patients who are posted with bronchopleural fistula repair, bronchial disruption, like patients with laceration with a knife, or patients posted for pneumonectomy. Now, where we can also use a DLT or a bronchial blocker, there are some indications for lung isolation. Any operation or surgical that requires surgical exposure through the chest cavity with just a lung collapse, we can use either a DLT or a bronchial blocker. So like in patients who are posted for video-assisted thoracic surgery, lobectomy or a bilobectomy, mediastinal mass resection through the chest, in selective cases, esophageal surgery, orthopedic procedures like in spine involving the chest, the thoracic spine surgery, and in minimal invasive cardiac surgery. That's where we use very often in our center the bronchial blocker most often. Now, specific indications for bronchial blockers also, as we see, difficult airway where double lumen tube insertion is difficult and it can have very limited access. Limited mouth opening, so again the difficult airway scenario. Awake orotracheal intubation, already intubated patients requiring lung isolation, tracheostomy patients requiring lung isolation. Selective lobar blockade is very well provided with bronchial blockers. And when you want to have these patients who are potentially requiring post-op ventilation in the post-op period. Now, first we will talk about the double lumen tube. Just a bit of history about the double lumen tube. In 1950, the first double lumen tube, which was named by Carlens, it had a characteristic of, it was mainly a left-sided double lumen tube was produced, and it had a carinal hook, and the shape of the double lumen tube, the cross section was a oval shape. And then in 1959, Breeze Smith developed another double lumen tube which had no carinal hook. Initially, this carinal hook was there for mode of stabilizing the double lumen tube, but what they found in regular usage of this kind of double lumen tube with carinal hook, that there were more chances of injury to the carina. So they started developing newer versions without carinal hook. And by 1960, Breeze Smith also developed a right-sided with no carinal hook, but also a slit in the bronchial cuff to provide right upper lobe ventilation, which is very important during one lung ventilation or right lung isolation. And in 1960 also, White developed a right-sided double lumen tube with a carinal hook. And now what we commonly use is the modified, that is in 1962, which Robert Shaw developed, a D-shaped cut section of the double lumen tube, which has got a larger lumen and no carinal hook. And at present, we are using the polyvinyl PVC type of modified types of Robert Shaw double lumen tubes. Now, in the history, this is how it looks like. This is Carlin's double lumen tube, which was a left-sided double lumen tube with you can see the carinal hook and the double lumen tube with the tip of the bronchial lumen facing towards the left side, and you got a tracheal lumen also. This is the more of the commonly used is the left Robert Shaw double lumen tube and the right Robert Shaw double lumen tube. Now what we are using is the PVC modified versions of the Robert Shaw double lumen tube. Now this is just another picture which shows a double lumen tube, the PVC types of double lumen tube. Now why we call this double lumen tube? Obviously the name it suggests it has got two lumens. So first is the tracheal lumen and the bronchial lumen. The bronchial is usually marked as blue. So most of the DLTs which are coming are the bronchial lumen is labeled as blue color, and also the bronchial, it has got two cuff since there are two tubes. One is the tracheal cuff which is proximally placed, and the distal cuff is the bronchial cuff which is distally placed over the bronchial part of the double lumen tube. Now it has got a stellate. The stellate should be, what we have to understand is, while insertion, because these double lumen tubes are now the newer varieties are the PVC type modified versions of Robert Shaw double lumen tube. So if the insertion with a stellate helps you to have the anatomy prefixed of the double lumen tube. Otherwise it becomes very pliable that while insertion you find it more difficult. But the stellate, you have to keep in mind, the stellate has to be placed once the double lumen tube is inserted beyond the vocal cord, then the stellate has to be removed, and then further proceed. It should be pushed, turning either to the left or the right, whichever double lumen tube we are using, so that we don't cause any trauma to the endotracheal anatomy. Now this is what we commonly use now in most of the centers. This is a PVC types of double lumen tube, and it has got a bronchial lumen and a tracheal lumen, and we can see this is a connector which is there. Now after insertion, this connector helps us to connect both the bronchial and the tracheal lumen to the either to the ambu bag or to the main anesthesia circuit. And in this connector there are two side ports where we usually help us to clamp, and then conformation of the double lumen tube is performed by clamping either of the bronchial lumen or the tracheal lumen through this connector. Now this is just a diagram. It shows what we've been describing. So it's got a double lumen tube, has got a tracheal lumen, tracheal tube and a bronchial limb, and it has got two pilot balloon. One is for the tracheal cuff and the bronchial cuff, and the tracheal cuff in most of the present double lumen tubes are usually inflated with 8 to 10 cc of air, whereas the bronchial cuff is usually within 3 to 5 cc. You should not be over inflating the bronchial cuff because there will be chances of endobronchial injury. And usually the distal part of the double lumen tube has got a bronchial curve. There are two curves in the double lumen tube. One is the oropharyngeal curve, which is placed proximally, and the distal part has got a bronchial curve. So either it is to the right or to the left as per the type of the double lumen tube. Now for a left-sided double lumen tube, the bronchial curve is more towards the left, and it doesn't have a accessory port for ventilation to the upper lobe, because you don't need that. For a right-sided double lumen tube, you got a accessory port just beyond the bronchial cuff so that we can ventilate the right upper lobe bronchus. Just to brush through again, what are the types of double lumen tube? The Carlens is the first double lumen tube which was produced, left-sided tube with a carinal hook, and the White, which produces the right-sided double lumen tube with a carinal hook, but there was a slot provided for upper lobe bronchus, and the cuff circumferentially, the bronchial cuff is just placed circumferentially proximal to the right upper lobe bronchus. Now, in Robert Shaw developed further the left and the right, which has got a wider and a larger lumens, and it's got a D-shaped lumens, and there was no carinal hook, and the angle of the bronchial portion, that is the bronchial curve, is approximately for the left is around 40 degrees, trying to maintain that the left bronchus is more angulated than the right, and whereas for the right-sided Robert Shaw tube, the bronchial cuff extends, the distal bronchial cuff extends from the lateral to the medial surface, and the taking off of there is a port open for the right upper lobe bronchus for ventilation of the right upper lobe bronchus. Now, the newer version which is developed is the BronchoCath right and left, and the left BronchoCath double lumen tube has got a bronchial angle. The distal bronchial angle is approximately 35 degrees. Now, this is what we get to see a BronchoCath. The difference between a BronchoCath and a Robert Shaw, or what we are using is presently the newer version of PVC type double lumen tube, is the bronchial lumen. That is for the, you can see both has got two lumens, the tracheal limb and has got a bronchial limb, and the tracheal cuff is also placed proximally, similar to the newer version of PVC type DLT. But you can see the tracheal lumen is placed in between the tracheal cuff and the bronchial cuff, and for a left-sided there is only single lumen, whereas the right-sided BronchoCath, there is an upper lumen, there is a lumen for the right lower and middle lobe, and also a slot free for the right upper lobe ventilation, which is very much important for right lung isolation or when we are using right-sided double lumen tube. Now, this is the cut section of different types of double lumen tubes which has been described till now. So the Carlen was a more of an oval shaped, Carlen White, and the Bree-Smith which developed has got an oval shape, and you can see through the cut section that it was more of anteroposterior, whereas the Carlen and White was more medial and laterally placed, the tracheal and the bronchial lumen, and both Carlen and White had hook, whereas the Bree-Smith and Robert Shaw didn't had hook. The market thing, the new development in the newer version is the Robert Shaw or the newer types has got a bigger lumen. You can see the D-shaped lumen in the Robert Shaw, which has got a wider lumen, and in both the bronchial and the tracheal lumen are more wider for better suctioning and better ventilation, and it doesn't have any tracheal hook. Now, there are a few double lumen tubes which are newly developed, that is developed in Japan by Fuji, the Sil Broncho DLT, which is made of silicon, and it is usually a left-sided bronchial DLT which is being produced, and the typical feature is a distal end, that is a wire reinforced endobronchial part is there, and there is a short bronchial tip with a reduced bronchial cuff causing a increased safety of margin for the left-sided lung isolation by using the left Silico Broncho DLT. Another newly designed is the Clini right-sided DLT, which has got a long oblique bronchial cuff with two ventilation slots which are provided for the right upper lobe. This is just for safety, for so that previously or the newer, the presently what we are using is the PVC types has got a single slot. This provides you a two ventilation slots so that we don't miss the right upper lobe ventilation, and it is very useful in patients with very short right mainstream bronchus with very low safety margin. Now, what size of double lumen tube? How do we do a size selection when we go or before we prepare? So it should be of the adequate sizes which should pass through the glottis without causing any trauma, and it should advance easily through the trachea and the bronchus with an air leak which is present in a fully deflated bronchial cuff state. Now, what are the available sizes in French? And internal diameter in millimeter is for 41 French, 39, 37, 35, 32, 28 and 26 French, with the subsequent internal diameter of 7.47, 6.56, 4.5 and 4 millimeter. Now, in our Indian standard, what we use in most of our adult patients is For female patients, anyone whose height is less than 160 centimeter, we opt for either 32 or 35, or any female patients whose height is more than 160 centimeter, we opt for 37 French. And in male patients whose height is more than 170 centimeter, we opt for 41 or 39 French. And in male patients whose height is less than 170, we opt for 37 or 39 French in Indian standards. So this is one type of way we select the double lumen tube, is by looking at the height of the patient. Now, is that only the ultimate thing? No, we cannot. As we progress further, we got to see also the chest X-ray of the patient. Preoperative chest X-ray, most commonly used is the posterior anterior view, PA view of the chest X-ray, and we try to look at the diameter, the arrow which is showing the tracheal diameter at the level of the clavicle. So that's the thing which we can look. And also we should see the air bronchogram. You can see the air bronchogram nicely in a PA view in a well inspirated film. So you get to know about the tracheobronchial anatomy also in looking at the chest X-ray, which is very much important before we go for any lung isolation techniques by using any of the devices. So we get to know what kind of bronchus we are dealing, or what kind of tracheobronchial tree the patient has. So here we can see a wide tracheal diameter with a more oblique on the left-sided mainstem bronchus and a less oblique right bronchus taking off from the carina. This is how we can identify the carina from the air bronchogram seen in a chest X-ray. Now, based on the tracheal diameter at the level of the clavicle, the approximate predicted bronchus size is equal to 0.68 into the tracheal diameter. So any tracheal diameter more than 18 mm, we can go for a DLT size of 41 French, and anyone having between 16 to 18, 39 French is preferable. Or patients having a tracheal diameter approximately or more than equal to 15 mm, we go for 37 French DLT. Or anyone having less than 14 mm diameter at the level of the clavicle, we should try 35 French or lesser than that. Now, the next thing is all thoracic surgery or patients who are posted for thoracic surgery, or patients where you need one lung ventilation, you obviously have a CT scan done. So if you have a CT scan in a coronal section, we can see there are two CT scan here. You can see on the left side, this is a CT scan of a normal young healthy patient who is posted for a minimal invasive cardiac surgery. You can see a well tracheobronchial anatomy, wide bore tracheal diameter also. And now if this is in the right side, we can see this is a coronal section of the tracheobronchial tree of a patient, 65-year-old patient who is a known case of severe COPD. So based on that, you can see there is a marked difference in the coronal section of the CT scan. And from the CT scan, what we get to see directly, we can identify from the left mainstem bronchus, the diameter of the left mainstem bronchus. Now, based on the left mainstem bronchus diameter, from what we see from the coronal section, for any bronchus less than 10 mm, we would prefer to have a DLT size of 32 French, and anyone having more than 12 or approximately 12 mm diameter, we prefer to use 39 to 49 French of DLT size. And in between, we can provide for 35 to 37 for diameters of 10 to 12 mm diameter of the left mainstem bronchus. Now, how do we introduce and what are the preparations? So first we have tried to know the sizes. What size of DLT we should be getting ready for the appropriate size for the patient. Then after getting the adequate size of the DLT, we should check both the lumens and any gross anomaly or the defect is there, and we should check both the cuffs by injecting 8 to 10 ml of air in the tracheal cuff and the 3 to 5 ml in the bronchial cuff, whether any leak is there. And at the end, we should lubricate nicely the bronchial cuff, because that's the distal end of the DLT and is the first part of the DLT which is going to get inserted. So we should be nicely lubricated either with a lubricant jelly or with lignocaine 2% jelly. And the technique what we use is, after doing an optimal laryngoscopy, the first distal curvature, which is concave, when we hold the DLT in an anatomical position, we should turn the DLT, making sure the distal part of the double lumen tube, the concave part should be faced anteriorly of the patient. The distal part of the DLT tube should passes the larynx, and once we pass the larynx and the bronchial cuff is gone beyond the vocal cords, we should remove the stellate and rotate the tube by 90-degree approximate curvature, either to the left or to the right, depending on the type of the DLT we are using. So if it is for the left-sided DLT, we rotate the DLT to the left side by 90 degrees, and for the right-sided DLT, we rotate to the right side by 90 degrees, and then we push it further till we get approximately, we have pushed beyond 28 to 30 centimeter of length of the double lumen tube, because usually in adult patients, we should, in any adult male patient, at the level of the incisor, we should be able to get the, if we place it correctly, we should be able to fix it at between 28 to 29 centimeter from the tip of the DLT. And in a female patient, we should be able to get the tip of the DLT fixed in a correct position between 26 to 28 centimeter at the level of the incisor. And once you have placed it, we inflate the tracheal cuff approximately 8 to 10 ml, and then the bronchial cuff 1 to 2 ml, and we confirm the position of the DLT by 3 techniques. So what are the techniques we used? First is, once we have inserted, we connect that either to the ambu bag by using the connector, as we have seen the connector which it comes with the DLT. And then we first is by looking at the chest movement. We first see the chest movements. So first we have inflated both the tracheal cuff and the bronchial cuff, and we inflate both the cuffs, and we bag and we check for the both the chest movements, both the left and the right side chest should be moving. And then after we seen the chest movement, we clamp the bronchial lumen, we clamp the tracheal lumen, sorry. We clamp the tracheal lumen first, and we check for the bag end movement if you are using a left-sided DLT, there should be a movement of the left chest which should be rising, and if you are using a right-sided DLT, there should be a rise in the chest movement in the right side. Now, this is just a schematic diagram how a blind technique is used. So we can see in the first here, the anterior tip of the DLT, the angulated part, the distal part of the bronchial cuff, is faced anteriorly, and once we pass the vocal cord and the bronchial cuff is gone beyond the vocal cord, we should rotate it either to the left for a left DLT, as you see in this diagram, and for a right DLT, we rotate it to the right by 90 degrees and we push it further. Now, there is another way of inserting a double lumen tube, is either a blind technique and then by using a fiber optic guidance, where most of the centers now availability of fiber optic is very easily available, and we should be using a fiber optic for placing a double lumen tube. Now, what we should do is, by using a double lumen tube by fiber optic, the fiber optic should be guided through the endobronchial, the bronchial lumen, and then after insertion, the fiber optic, once we place to the whichever bronchus we want to isolate, either into the left or to the right bronchus, we railroad the DLT through the fiber optic. So coming to the depth of the insertion, how deep it should be inserted, based on height, approximately as I suggested, around 29 centimeter for a height of 170 centimeter, well-built male or female, and for each 10 centimeter increase or decrease of height, the depth should be increased by or decreased by 1 centimeter. So approximately there is a formula by for depth of insertion is 12 plus patient height by 10 centimeter. Now, this is how a fiber optic guidance is done, a schematic diagram. I'm sorry, I don't have the video of it. We couldn't play the video of this. So once we place the fiber optic, you can see in the second diagram, the fiber optic scope is passed through the bronchial lumen, and it is we are planning for a left lung isolation for a placement of a left-sided DLT. It has gone through the left-sided. After confirming the left bronchus, the fiber optic is placed in the mid part of the left mainstem bronchus, and then you railroad the double lumen tube over the fiber optic bronchoscope, and under vision of fiber optic bronchoscope, we inflate both the tracheal and the bronchial lumen. Now, after we have confirmed, we can pull out the fiber optic bronchoscope through the take out from the bronchial lumen and pass it through the tracheal lumen to further confirm whether it is correctly placed to the left side, by identifying the taking off of the right upper lobe bronchus, which has got a clover leaf appearance in a fiber optic view. Now, this is how a fiber optic view will show you the optimum position if you are using a left-sided DLT. So the first view, what we get to see, if you're pushing the bronchoscope through the tracheal lumen, first we need to see the carina. This is how the carina looks like at the 2 o'clock position of the, this is how the carina, and you can see the bluish hue of the endobronchial cuff just inserted into the left mainstem bronchus. Now, and how do we confirm further that it is gone into the left mainstem bronchus? We push the fiber optic bronchoscope beyond the carina, and we try to look for the taking off of the right upper lobe bronchus. And this is the view of the right upper lobe bronchus, which we see at around 10 o'clock position, which is a classical view called clover leaf appearance. We get to see the 3 openings of the right upper lobe bronchus. And further confirmatory is done when we initially, if you are reloading this DLT through a fiber optic view, a fiber optic scope, you should be able to see the fiber optic, like as in 4 o'clock position, you can get to see how a fiber optic view of a left mainstem bronchus looks like, the distal part, taking off of the left upper lobe, and the lower lobe looks like this. So that's how we confirm DLT positioning by using a fiber optic bronchoscope. Now, just a video. This is, we have placed a left DLT and we are confirming by placing the fiber optic. This is, we are inserting the fiber optic bronchoscope through the tracheal lumen. As you can see, this is the tracheal lumen is not a bluish color. So, and once we come out through the tracheal lumen, you can see the carina just in front of you. And we need to confirm that it is gone into the left side by pushing the fiber optic bronchoscope further, and we try to look for the right upper lobe, taking off of the right upper lobe. So this is how we get to see, and you can see the clover leaf appearance of the right upper lobe bronchus, and that's how we confirm the that the DLT is placed into the left-sided by pushing the fiber optic bronchoscope through a tracheal lumen. Now, when we place a right-sided DLT, now first of all, it can be done through a blind technique as we discussed earlier, or through a fiber optic guidance, that when we push the fiber optic, railroad it over the endobronchial lumen. Now, the first thing we need to identify is, again, taking off of the right upper lobe bronchus from the right mainstem bronchus. So this is very much important. I'm stressing on this because this clover leaf appearance should be well looked into it when we do a fiber optic guidance. And this is how it looks like if you see it through a bronchial endobronchial lumen, and also the opening of the distal part of the bronchial lumen for ventilation of the right upper lobe bronchus, the clover leaf appearance. And if you push the fiber optic bronchoscope through the tracheal lumen, you get to see the carina. This is how it looks, the carina, and you can see the bluish hue just entering the bronchial endobronchial cuff. We can see the bluish hue of the endobronchial cuff into the right mainstem bronchus. And if you push the further the bronchoscope inside, we should be able to see the taking off of the left lower lobe and the left upper lobe bronchus. So this is again the right DLT confirmation. Here we are inserting the fiber optic bronchoscope again through the tracheal lumen, and at the end of the distal end of the tracheal lumen, we should be able to identify first the carina. So this is how we get to see the carina here, and you can see the bluish hue of the endobronchial cuff is into the right mainstem bronchus, and you can see the more angulated left bronchus, and at the distal end of the left bronchus, we can see the both taking off of the left lower lobe and the left upper lobe bronchus. Now, what size of fiber optic bronchoscope we can use in DLT? The best is, if you see at the chart, we should be able to have 3.6 to between 3.6 to 4.2. That is an infant size fiber optic bronchoscope is the best to have for any procedure related to the one lung ventilation for lung isolation technique. Either we use a double lumen tube or a bronchial blocker, because as you see, as we go for adult size fiber optic bronchoscope, you cannot fit very snugly fit for a larger size of DLT. And when we are using a bronchial blocker also for an adult fiber optic bronchoscope, it is sometimes very difficult to negotiate within the endotracheal tube along the side of the bronchial blocker. So the most preferred is between 3.6 to 4.2, the infant type of bronchoscope, it is placed, and it is very easy for any size of DLT, or placement can be done very easily or through any size of endotracheal tube while we are using also a bronchial blocker. Now coming to what is called margin of safety. This is basically the length of the tracheobronchial tree, which is between the most distal and the proximal acceptable positions. For a left-sided DLT, the length over which a DLT can move and still be correctly positioned, and the most proximal acceptable position is for a the left endobronchial cuff is just below the carina, and the most distal acceptable position for a left-sided DLT, the tip of the left lumen is at the proximal edge of the left upper lobe orifice. The average margin of safety for a left mainstem bronchus is approximately 16 to 19 millimeter. So this is a schematic diagram which shows the for a left-sided double lumen tube how left-sided double lumen tube shows margin of safety. Now in the left-sided, so this is the distal end of the endobronchial left-sided DLT. So the endobronchial cuff should be the most acceptable proximal acceptable position is just beyond the carina, and whereas the distal part of the endobronchial cuff, if the most acceptable distal position is where the tip of the double lumen, the endobronchial tip of the left DLT should be just proximal to the taking off of the left upper lobe bronchus. Now for a right-sided DLT, the most proximal acceptable position will be is the endobronchial cuff is just below the carina, and the most distal acceptable position is the distal margin of the endobronchial cuff is at the proximal margin of the right upper lobe orifice. So in this schematic diagram, you can see the most proximal acceptable position, since the endobronchial cuff should be just below the carina, and the distal part, the most distal acceptable position is the distal margin of the endobronchial cuff is just at the proximal margin of the right upper lobe orifice. Now here what we can see the difference is, here the margin of safety for a right-sided double lumen tube is very less than the left-sided double lumen tube. So this is the left-sided double lumen tube, we got a longer length of safety of margin. So this is one of the major reason why most of the thoracic anesthetists, they prefer to use a left-sided double lumen tube even for a right-sided thoracic procedures, because you got a wider margin, lengthier margin of safety, and also you don't need to worry about the there is always a tricky part is ventilation and inadequate ventilation of the right upper lobe bronchus. Now when we are using this kind of gadget, obviously we have complication. The most commonest complication for using a DLT is tracheobronchial tree rupture or any trauma which has been there. Majority of them occurs because of the undersized DLT, and we try to force in forcefully. Other predisposing condition can be tube malposition, rapid inflation of the bronchial cuff. Patients having with weak bronchial wall can also present this kind of tracheal, this kind of complication, and usually it presents as subcutaneous emphysema initially, then go on to pneumothorax, pneumomediastinum, and then cardiovascular compromise. Sometimes can present with hemoptysis or blood in the tracheal tube, and post extubation you can present hemoptysis or delayed presentation is also sometimes seen. So now that is one of the major reason that why we have most of the anesthetists who are doing thoracic cases are preferring bronchial blocker than DLT. One of the major reason is prevent tracheobronchial tree injury. Now how do we prevent? First, any kind of, you have to select a proper size, which is very important. Sometimes even after selecting the proper size by adequate looking at the chest x-ray, looking at the height of the patient, and even if CT scan is there, some anomaly inside can also cause problem or injury to the patient. So selecting a proper size tube by more of the modalities, not only by the height, we should look at the x-ray, and also if possible through the coronal section of the CT scan, helps in preventing any injury. Detect malposition of the DLT early possibility by using fiber optic bronchoscope while insertion and even after positioning of the patient for final surgical position. So we should always have a fiber optic bronchoscope inside the OT when we are even using a double lumen tube, because after positioning for surgical exposure, we have to confirm whether any malposition or displaced position. Avoid forceful insertion of the tube. Avoid overinflation of the bronchial cuff can help in prevention of any injury. Deflate bronchial cuff during turning. That's one of the way we can prevent injury. periodically monitor cuff pressures, and we have to be very cautious in patients with bronchial wall anomalies. Malposition, very commonly not seen in DLT, so that is one of the biggest advantage we have over DLT over bronchial blocker. So malposition chances are less, but can result in DLT when you are. And how do we identify? When we are suddenly unable to ventilate both lungs, when you are able, when we fail to empty lung causes gas trapping, partial collapse of the ventilated lung, contamination of the other lung, which can happen. And it can happen most commonly while turning and positioning of the patient, and also during surgical manipulation. Now, how do we prevent? Again, by stabilizing the DLT during turning, and obviously at the end, fiber optic guided checking and repositioning. Now, as we said, the advantage of this gadget, the double lumen tube, is very more versatile. Ability to do suctioning of the collapsed lung is much more easier because you got a wider bore lumen. Rapid inflation and deflation of the lung or the surgical collapsed lung, and application of the CPAP to the collapsed lung is more easier by using a DLT. So that's one of these are the few advantages of the DLT. Now, the major disadvantages what we have and why we have shifted from DLT to bronchial blocker, most of us now prefer to use, is because malposition, distorted tracheobronchial anatomy can cause more chances of injury to the tracheobronchial tree. Need to change to a single lumen tube for a post-op ventilation, then we are then again chances of injury. We have to remove the DLT before shifting the patient and change over to single lumen tube again. Scenarios of difficult intubation, it's very difficult to insert double lumen tube, so it's more preferred that lung isolation techniques are performed by using bronchial blockers. Selective blockades of lobes are not possible by using double lumen tube, and since they are having smaller internal diameter, you may land up in having higher airway pressures. Some of the relative contraindications where double lumen tube may not be used: presence of lesions along the pathway of DLT, that is in the tracheal tree, distorted tracheal bronchial tree, difficult or impossible conventional direct vision intubation or difficult intubation scenario where you don't, and whenever you require a difficult intraoperative change from a DLT to a single lumen tube, we should always think that whether we should use a DLT or a bronchial blocker along with a single lumen tube. And in extremely critically patients where they are very highly dependent on ventilator and you still need to proceed for a one lung ventilation, we should not use double lumen tube because they may not tolerate the short period of the ventilator when we are trying to insert the double lumen tube. And in patients with full stomach and high risk for aspiration, double lumen tube is relatively contraindicated. Now, coming to bronchial blockers, these are the latest gadgets we are using for using one lung isolation techniques instead of double lumen tubes. So obviously, when you have a patient with such a scenario, a very difficult airway scenario, or any patients who are in tracheostomy, double lumen tube is very difficult to insert, but still you want to proceed, obviously bronchial blocker is the choice. And in patients who are posted for video assisted thoracic surgery, where you are already, the surgeons are using mini ports, so and post-op ventilation sometimes are required, so we prefer to use a bronchial blocker, because here the main concern about lung isolation is collapse of the lung. So there is no scenario of lung swelling, so you don't need to worry about lung swelling. So bronchial blocker is a preferred choice, and also in minimal invasive cardiac surgery where lung isolation technique is easily performed by using a bronchial blocker. Now, advantages and disadvantages of the bronchial blocker over double lumen tubes are, now mainly advantages: difficult intubation scenario, tube change at the end of the operation is unnecessary, pediatric use is very much possible by using a bronchial blocker, selective lobar collapse is possible, theoretically lower tube resistance for ventilation of one lung. Now, what are the disadvantages we usually find by using bronchial blockers? Positioning takes longer, but I would rather suggest that if you are used to using, so the more often you use a bronchial blocker, it is easier. So it depends on the experience of the practitioner. It is less versatile than the double lumen tube, migrates more easily during surgery. This is one of the concerns of a bronchial blocker, which is very easily seen. So you need to always have a fiber optic bronchoscope is must for having using a bronchial blocker for lung isolation technique in operation theater, because even slight migration of a bronchial blocker can lead to major havoc, and the most commonest is proximal displacement of the bronchial blocker into the tracheal lumen, and which causes severe hypoxia and increased airway pressure. Small lumen lung deflation is very slow. Limited suction technique is possible with using a bronchial blocker, because the port of the bronchial blocker, the distal ports, are small. So when you are using a bronchial blocker for a soiled lung, say like lung abscess and all, is not preferred in these kind of cases, because you may not be able to do faster suction. Lung reinflation techniques with possible cough movement is there. Repeated, when you require patients with repeated lung deflation and reinflation, it is difficult, but it is not that it is possible. Again, depending on the practitioner's experience, and in specifically during pneumonectomy, blocker has to be retracted, same like a DLT for bronchial closure, and that moment the ventilation is temporarily lost, so not preferred for patients with pneumonectomy. Now, where all we do indicate bronchial blockers, mainly again critical ill patients where we require rapid sequence induction, like in full stomach scenario, difficult in airway scenario, where we require patients need to have post-op ventilation, and patient needs to be intubated in the post-op period. You don't need to change the tube, so you use a single lumen tube straight away along with the bronchial blocker in small adult and pediatric patients, and also in obese adults. Now, this is a diagram which shows the tips of the bronchial blockers, which we are commonly available. Now, on the left side, the A is the Fuji. This is the Fogarty catheter. This is the Fuji prefixed in a bronchial blocker, and this is the Fuji version, Kubdek version of the modified version of Fuji endobronchial blocker. This is a wire-guided Arndt blocker. You can see a distal end has got an elliptical cuff with a wire loop. This uses a loop technique, which will be coming shortly. This is a Cohen type of bronchial blocker. Now you can see a Murphy's eye also at the tip, and a distal port also there is an opening, and a circular cuff, and it's got a arrow which usually helps us to identify or helps us to also place the Cohen bronchial blocker to whichever side of the lumen we want to isolate. And the last diagram of the tip is the EZ blocker. It has got two blockers on both sides. So this is mainly placed at the carinal. So one is placed to the left side, the other bronchial cuff is placed to the right side. So it can be used for differential lung ventilation more easily. So whichever side of lung you want to isolate, after placing this endobronchial blocker at the level of the carina, we inflate whichever side we want to isolate the bronchial cuff. Now, few of the salient features of bronchial blockers which we use. Now, Fogarty catheters usually available between 6 to 8 French. The length is approximately 80 centimeters. The balloon is usually spherical, and it can be filled up with between 0.5 to 10 ml capacity. Now, this filling up of the balloon has to be always done under fiber optic guidance, because every patient differs, their endobronchial anatomy also differs. So under vision, the distal tip of the catheter, the bronchial cuff should be occluded, and we should be able to occlude only the circumferentially. So whatever amount of the air which is required for this kind of catheter, the bronchial blockers, under vision it should be. So there is nothing fixed amount like in DLT that between 8 to 10 ml. So obviously under vision, whatever amount is required to occlude the mainstem bronchus is whatever is preferred. And it can be inserted either coaxial or parallel. Coaxial means along the side of the ET tube, or parallelly through the ET tube along with the endobronchial, along with the fiber optic bronchoscope. Arndt blocker is again available between 5, 7 and 9 French. 7 and 9 is usually used for our adult patient. The balloon shape of the distal tip is either spherical or elliptical. The more often is available is elliptical, and it is the guidance mechanism is along with the fiber optic. It's got a nylon wire loop guidance which is coupled with the fiber optic, which I'll be showing you the video. And the method of insertion is coaxial through the ET tube. Parallel is very difficult because along the side of the ET tube. Now, the minimum size of the good thing about this kind of blockers is, as we can see, the 5 French blocker can be easily used in patients where we use 4.5 single lumen ET tube, and whereas the 9 French can be easily used with a minimum size of single lumen ET tube of 8 size. Cohen blocker again comes up with a 9 French. The length of the blocker is approximately 65 centimeter. The balloon shape is usually spherical, and it's got a torque device at 55 centimeter mark to deflect the pre-angled distal tip. As we have seen the distal tip of the Cohen blocker, the arrow which was there marked, so the beyond that arrow, it's got a torque device. So it either deviates to the left or to the right according to the torque device movement, and we can negotiate either to the left or to the right mainstem bronchus for isolating any of the lungs. And the Murphy's size is present, and the center channel diameter is approximately 1.56 mm. Fuji univent blocker is one type of blocker which comes along with the ET tube, which I'll be discussing. And the EZ blocker is available in the 7 size range. It's got both the balloons are spherical in shape. Guidance mechanism is none. It is just passed through the ET tube and is sits at the level of the carina. And after conforming through the fiber optic bronchoscope of the placement, we can either isolate left or right, and is usually placed coaxially. Smallest recommended size ET tube which can be placed by EZ blocker is 7.5 French, and the center channel is of both the lumens are 1.4 mm. Now coming to the description of an univent tube, it was developed by Dr. Inouye. This is a movable blocker shaft is there, and with an external lumen of a single lumen ET tube. So it comes along with the endobronchial blocker. So you can see the blocker is fixed along with the endotracheal tube. So what are the sizes which we have is 3.5, 5 and 9 sizes available. Now what we see here is that we don't have to attach separately the endobronchial blocker. So this comes along with the ET tube, and it's got a tracheal cuff and a distal bronchial cuff with the both pilot balloon, and you can see the bronchial endobronchial blocker is placed along the side of the ET tube. Now what are the steps? How do we manage to insert this univent blocker? So after doing a normal laryngoscopy, you insert the univent tube by just like a normal intubation with a single lumen ET tube, but making sure the endobronchial, the bronchial blocker part, that is the distal tip of the blocker part, is pulled out very much proximally. So first we insert this tube like a normal ET tube, and once you have inserted by using the fiber optic bronchoscope, we first confirm the ET tube, and then we look for the carina, and we want whichever side we want to isolate. Say for left lung isolation, we push, we confirm that this is the left-sided bronchus we want to isolate. So we turn the curvature of the univent, the concavity of the curvature of the univent tube is turned towards the side of the bronchus which we want to isolate, and then we push further the endobronchial, the bronchial blocker along the side of the endobronchial bronchus we want to isolate under fiber optic guidance. And once we have pushed the bronchial blocker into the mainstem bronchus under fiber optic guidance, we should inflate the distal tip of the bronchial cuff so that it occludes circumferentially the whole lumen of the bronchus. Now what are the advantages of using this univent blocker? It's easier to insert and properly it's positioned. It can be ventilated, patient can be ventilated during positioning also by using the connector. It can be positioned also in lateral position. Post-op ventilation is easily provided because it comes like a single lumen ET tube. Turning from supine to prone is very easy with this kind of univent tube. Selective lower blockade is also possible, and you can apply CPAP to the non-ventilated lung by giving CPAP to the distal tip of the endobronchial blocker. Now, what are the limitations of this endobronchial blocker? That is slow deflation time. That it takes a lot of time to deflate the cuff and collapse of the tracheal lumen. So you need to do suctioning of the bronchial lumen is also limited. Blockage by blood and pus can cause problem to the this kind of ET tube. High pressure cuff using an intra-op leak in the bronchial cuff, which can happen because of the positioning, inflation volume, or rearranging of the surgical field is difficulty. Now again, the indications more commonly: prone position, distorted anatomy, airway anatomy, anticipated post-op ventilation, bilateral surgeries can be univent tube is very easily used, or any surgeons who are not very indecisive can also help. Now coming to the next type of wire-guided bronchial blocker, this is developed by Dr. Arndt. So this is a bronchial blocker which is got a endobronchial catheter. It's got a bronchial catheter, and the distally it's got a single lumen balloon, endobronchial balloon. The feature is it's got a wire guided nylon distal loop, and proximally it's got the balloon, which has got the pilot balloon for the bronchial cuff, and it's got a proximal end for both. This is the adapter which comes along with it. Is mainly marketed by Cook. It's got a ventilation port. That's where you connect to the machine end, so you can continuously ventilate to the patient when we are inserting the bronchial blocker. So this is one of the advantages. So you don't need to actually have no ventilation period while insertion, though it can sometimes take longer period to place the endobronchial blocker, but still we are able to ventilate because of this adapter. And you got a bronchoscopy port and the blocker port, and the distal end of this adapter is a 50 mm endotracheal tube connector, which usually gets connected to all the 80 tubes. Now the different sizes of ARNT blocker which is available here is 9 French, 7 French and 5 French. The 9 French usually of 78 to 65 centimeter, and the smallest single lumen tube which can be used with this 9 French ARNT blocker is 7.5. For a 7 French, the smallest single lumen tube can be used is 6 mm ET tube, and for a 5 French ARNT blocker, the smallest ET tube which we can use is for 4.5. So this is a pediatric ARNT blocker, 5 French. Now advantages, again the same like for all the bronchial blockers. In already intubated patients, it can be used. Critically ill patient, difficult airway scenario, nasotracheal intubation, selective lobar ventilation, and patients having hemoptysis. Disadvantages, the most common disadvantages of this wire looped endobronchial blocker is it easily migrates. So frequent examination by fiber optic bronchoscopy is required. Blockage of the suction port, because the suction port is only 1.4 mm. There is not much of effective seal sometimes if you are not doing a seal properly, or the herniation of the bronchial cuff is there. And once we withdraw the guide wire, which is placed, which is used for insertion of this ARNT blocker, it cannot be inserted again for 7 size French, but for 9 French, the wire guide wire is very much stiffer, it can be placed again. So this is just a video demo. This is how you should see a ARNT blocker is prepared. If you have a silicone spray, we can use a silicone spray to lubricate the whole of the ARNT blocker, or if you don't have a silicone spray, we can use a jelly. So this is how the adapter looks like. So you have a endobronchial port, the bronchoscopy port, and the ventilation port. So here first we connect to the ventilation port, and the distal end is the tip here is the bronchoscopy, and you can see how we are inserting the ARNT blocker through the bronchoscopy port. Now once we've inserted the bronchial blocker, we have to loop the blocker by inserting the the fiber optic bronchoscope through the loop of this blocker. So this is more of a wire guided technique. It can be done either inside or it can be done outside also, like this. So we can either fix the blocker, loop the blocker outside, or by outside also or inside. And after looking at the carina, so how do we guide it? We confirm the bronchoscope which we want to isolate. So here we can see that from carina we are able to isolate, we can identify the left sided bronchus, and that's once you have identified the confirmed bronchus, here we want to isolate the left mainstem bronchus. We railroad this blocker, and after seeing the blocker which has railroaded, we make sure that it is placed in the bronchus, and under vision we inflate the cuff. So here we can see the cuff getting inflated, and we keep on inflating till the whole circumferential lumen of the endobronchial cuff, the stem, is fully occluded by the cuff. So here you can see it is well placed into the left mainstem bronchus, and after before positioning you need to deflate the endobronchial cuff, and again after positioning, repositioning of the patient, under fiber optic guidance, again we should reinflate the cuff, making sure that there is no much of migration of this ARNT blocker. And once the final position, the surgical position is done, this is how we remove the wire loop, and you can use a syringe by aspirating. For this is the technique which we use to collapse the non-ventilated lung, or the lung which is isolated, and the distal port, the proximal port of the tip is also used by for providing CPAP. So this is how we use the CPAP. So in a surgical, when you don't require a CVF, this is a diagram which shows how an ARNT blocker is used in a patient. So you can see, well, the machine is connected to the ventilation port. The bronchoscopy is not anymore required during the inter-procedure, and the bronchoscope is well fixed, and it is screwed at the level of where the level which is proximally fixed, and you can there is not much of migration after we fix the endobronchial blocker. Now, Cohen tip deflecting blocker, which we have seen, it's usually available in 9 French external diameter with a central lumen which has got a 1.6 mm diameter, and it's got a high volume, low pressure cuff, which is more of spherical in shape, and approximately 5 to 8 ml it can be inflated with. The side holes between the tip and the balloon is usually used to evacuate the gas from the distal lung or to insufflate oxygen, and it's got a proximal control wheel to adjust the tip deflection. So this is how a Cohen blocker looks like. So externally, you can see the Cohen blocker is fixed to a single lumen ET tube. So this is, again, it comes with a similar kind of adapter as we have seen in the ARNT blocker. So it's got a bronchial port, the fiber optic port, and the ventilation port. So once we have placed, so this is what we are talking about, the proximal torque device, which is very specific feature of this Cohen type of bronchial blocker. And it's got also, and this is the pilot balloon for inflating the distal endobronchial cuff. So by using the torque device, as you can see, the distal part of the Cohen blocker here, the arrow, which is marked by black line. So here, this part of the endobronchial blocker, on rotating this torque, it either deviates to the left or to the right. So it basically angulates antiflexion or retroflexion, and under vision, we can manipulate this blocker, moving it to more to the left or to the right, whichever side we want to isolate. So this is just a video which we show how we can isolate a lung. So once we have confirmed through fiber optic, the first view we need to confirm is a carina, and then we want to isolate the left side. So we have pushed the fiber optic bronchoscope into the left side. We can see both the lumens, the left upper lobe and the left lower lobe. Lumen is well seen. And then again, once we know that this is the left mainstem bronchus, we bring the fiber optic bronchoscope back to the level of the carina, and then under making sure the center of the vision is the carina, you can see at the right side, the 3 o'clock position is the right mainstem bronchus, and the 9 o'clock position is the left mainstem bronchus taking off. And since we know that confirmed by looking at both the distal end, we push the Cohen blocker, and you can see how we push it by deflecting the Cohen blocker more to the left by using the proximal torque device. And after we have pushed the proximal this blocker into the left mainstem bronchus, under vision, this is very much important, all the bronchial blockers should be inflated under vision, and we should make sure the whole circumferential lumen of the mainstem bronchus is occluded under vision. So that is the amount of whatever the amount of air which we require. So we cannot actually judge the amount of air we require to occlude for using in a bronchial cuff, while using an endobronchial cuff blocker. Now, Fuji uni blocker, it's another type of blocker which is made of silicone. It's got a fixed distal angulation to facilitate insertion, and optimal position of this device is achieved after the patient is turned either into the lateral decubited position. So just to differentiate how a Fuji blocker looks like, the distal end of the Fuji blocker is got a fixed deflection and a fixed deflected tip is there, and whereas a Cohen, it doesn't have a fixed deflection. This has been deflected by using the torque device, and this is an ARNT blocker which is a wire guided. So this is how we differentiate the distal tip of the 3 different types of blocker we are talking about. Now this is Coop-Dick endobronchial blocker, another version which is very well easily available in India now. This is a modified version of Fuji blocker. So this is a PVC type of Fuji blocker. It's got a fixed deflected, you can see the distal part in the left sided diagram, the fixed deflected angulated distal part of the blocker is fixed, and the endobronchial cuff is also circular in shape, and it's proximally it comes with the adapter, prefixed adapter, which has got a ventilation port, the bronchoscopy port, and already the blocker is coming through the bronchoscopy port. So you can very well see the bronchoscopy port the blocker which has got an autopilot auto inflate balloon, or it may or may not have some what we use in our institution doesn't come with auto inflate balloon. It's got a pilot balloon, and this is the port we use. This is the port. The proximal port is well connected to the distal port, which can be used for both suctioning, for either deflation of the lung after lung isolation, or for applying CPAP to the non-ventilated lung by connecting a CPAP connector. So this is a video which shows that after we confirm the carina under a fiber optic bronchoscopy guidance, we see the prefixed distal end of the bronchial blocker is pushed to the left-sided bronchus, as we have confirmed that side is the left mainstem bronchus by identifying the right upper lobe bronchus of the other side. So here we are pushing the fiber optic bronchoscope into the right mainstem bronchus and trying to look for the taking off of the right upper lobe bronchus. And once we have confirmed that, we inflate the, this is the, we are making sure the right mainstem bronchus has anatomy, the right lower lobe and the right middle lobe bronchus. And once we confirm that this is the right mainstem bronchus, we very sure that the other bronchus is the left mainstem bronchus, and still we want to counter sure, we can push the fiber optic bronchoscope further beyond the bronchial blocker and make sure that there are two openings. And under vision, we should inflate the cuff to make sure the whole lumen of the endobronchial lumen is circumferentially occluded. This is how it looks like, and it should be occluding the whole lumen of the bronchus. So this is how it looks like when we use a Coupe deck blocker. You can see very well from the head end. So a single lumen tube is used. This is the prefixed adapter which comes with this blocker. So once the blocker is placed, it's fixed here by a fixation device which comes along with the blocker. And this is the pilot balloon which of the endobronchial cuff we are talking about, which has been inflated for the lung isolation. And once the surgery is started, if the saturation drops, we can apply CPAP by giving a CPAP device which is connected to the proximal part of this the bronchial cuff, bronchial lumen, by using a pediatric ASTPs, modified pediatric ASTPs device, and partially closing the valve of the bag so it doesn't inflate the left lung or the lung which is non-dependent or non-ventilated, but just enough to cause CPAP or oxygen insufflation. So this is which shows in a picture that how easily a patient with tracheostomy, by using left side here, we have used a Cohen type bronchial blocker in a tracheostomy patient, and here an Arndt wire guided blocker is used in a tracheostomy patient, where it is very much recommended that in patients with tracheostomy, this kind of bronchial blockers are preferred and more easily used for lung isolation techniques. Now coming to further brushing up our characteristics of Cohen, Arndt and Fuji bronchial blockers. The Cohen blocker comes usually a single size 9 French. The balloon is spherical. Guidance mechanism is the wheel device to deflect the tip, distal tip. It is not a prefix tip, it's got a movable distal tip. Smallest recommended ET tube for coaxial use is 8 size endotracheal tube. Murphy eyes is present, and the center channel diameter is a bit wider, around 1.6 mm. Whereas the Arndt blocker, it comes in 5 French, which is used for pediatric, 7 French and 9 French. 7 French is usually used for female patient, 9 French for well-built adult male patients. The balloon which we use more is a spherical type. It's got a guidance mechanism, is a nylon wire loop technique along with fiber optic bronchoscope. The ET tube which are recommended for 5 French, smallest can be used along with 4.5 ET tubes. For 7 French, it's 7 size, and for 9 French bronchial blocker, 8 size ET tube is preferred. Murphy's eyes is only present in the 9 French bronchial blocker, whereas the internal diameter of the distal tip is a bit smaller than the Cohen blocker, so 1.4 mm. So the difficulty with this kind of blocker is easily suctioning is not very much recommended, or it's not possible. Fuji uni blocker, it comes with 5 and 9 French. The balloon shape is usually spherical. There is no guidance. Usually a pre-shaped fixed tip is there, and the mechanism which we use, what we saw in the video, is by under vision of fiber optic bronchoscope. and the smallest ET tube which can be used for 9 French is 8 size ET tube. Murphy size is not present, and it's got a wider center channel around 2.0 mm internal diameter, so a better way of which is helpful for deflation and reinflation and applying CPAP. Now, Fogarty catheter, as we discussed, can also be used. It can be used for as an independent bronchial blocker. It is either placed inside or along the side of the ET tube, but placing along the side of the ET tube is a bit difficult than inside, and can be used for selective blocker, lower blockade. But the problem is it's got a high pressure, low volume cuff, and it was mainly now preferred only for patients with pediatric usage. For adults, since we are very much easily available nowadays, adult bronchial blockers, we don't need to use this. But previously, it was used when bronchial blocker were not much easily available. Where in a difficult airway scenario, how do we manage for a lung isolation technique? We can either use a double lumen tube also if you don't have a bronchial blocker. But how do we manage? First, for a difficult airway scenario, we need to manage the difficult airway first by intubating the patient either through fiber optic guidance or whatever the difficult airway scenario steps are. And we should be able to manage to insert a single lumen tube, and by using a tube exchanger, if you don't have any bronchial blocker in place, we can insert a double lumen tube of the appropriate side for the patient for lung isolation technique. Otherwise, for any difficult airway scenario, after we manage to secure the airway by using a single lumen tube, if you are having a bronchial blocker, it's very easy for lung separation techniques. For a double lumen tube insertion, first we need to insert a single lumen tube and secure the airway by following the difficult airway pathway, but we should have a tube exchanger in place. Now, the last bit is how do we manage for pediatric one lung ventilation? For double lumen tube, sizes like 26, 28, 32 Frenches are used, can be used for patients aged of 8, 10 and 12 years respectively. But the problem with in children using a double lumen tube, specifically for the right sided, is margin of safety is less, and also for a left sided DLT, the margin of safety is less in children. Other types of instruments which can be used is balloon tipped bronchial blocker like Fogarty embolectomy catheter, fiber optic guidance, or a Cook 5 French pediatric bronchial blocker, which can be used from between the age of 2 to 16 years can be used. Or some centers, they also use a single lumen tube. You push the single lumen tube in endobronchially, and it's a very simple technique to use for single lung for one lung ventilation. For left, you rotate the ET tube 180 degrees and turn the head to the right, and you push it inside. But obviously, it has to be confirmed fiber optically. But main disadvantage is it can failure to provide seal with an uncuffed ET tube, unable to do proper suctioning to the operating lung, and it can also cause obstruction to the upper lobe bronchus if you are using for the right-sided lung isolation technique. Now, this is a chart which shows how tube selection can be done in children for one lung ventilation. So these are different size of ET tubes, and the bronchial blocker which should be available. So usually what is available readily is 5 French, 7 French and 9 French. So for any patients aged less than 3 years, Fogarty catheter is more preferable. Otherwise, you need to have a bronchial blocker of sizes between 2 to 3. And any patients, children who are more than 4 years, you can easily use a 5 size bronchial blocker. More commonly is a Arndt bronchial blocker which is available. And at the end, I'd like to thank you everyone, and I would recommend everyone to go to this site called www.thoracicanesthesia.com. It's give a wonderful presentation of the bronchoscopy stimulation by Dr. Peter Slinger, and it's been my privilege to have a opportunity to work with him in one of the conferences held in Kolkata here. And for lung isolation technique, by using any of the gadgets which are available in your center, the main thing is anatomy, and having a bronchoscopy idea of how the bronchial tree is very much important. So if you get hands-on experience, is very much better. Otherwise, at least visit this site called thoracicanesthesia.com. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Devendra, for your Excellent, very comprehensive and lucid presentation. And this is the time to type in your questions. So if you have any questions, please type it in the chat box and send it to us so that Dr. Khan can answer it. So far, we do not have any questions. So this is just a question from my side. You have used extensive experience of using both the double lumen tube and a bronchial blocker. So suppose you get a situation where you can use both of them, you have both of them available, and both of them are eminently suitable. So what would be your personal preference in this case?
First of all, I would like to first see what kind of surgery I am looking for. So if in our center both DLT, what you're saying is if both DLT and bronchial blocker is available, I need to first find out what type of surgery. So if it is a surgery which is mainly for which has a chances of soiling, like lung abscess, hydatid cyst, I would rather prefer still a double lumen tube, because you need to protect the other lung from getting soiled. And then the second scenario is what kind of airway we are dealing with. So if you have a normal airway, and if it's the type of surgery is what we mentioned, that there is no risk of soiling of the lung, just a normal lobectomy, I would still prefer for a bronchial blocker, because it's more easier to insert, since we are more often using it, less atraumatic, and obviously since fiber optic bronchoscopy is there with us, infant type fiber optic bronchoscope should be there in the OT, I would prefer for bronchial blocker. But thinking in mind, the 3 steps is what kind of airway anatomy I'm dealing with, and what kind of surgery we are providing the lung isolation technique for.
I think there is just one question right now from our president. In a purulent lung, what should be the steps of lung isolation with bronchial blockers? So if you have pus and infection, you avoid a bronchial blocker. That's the general idea.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to avoid a bronchial blocker for a purulent lung, because first of all, there may be a chances of dislodgement of so sealing of the non-purulent or the normal lung is questionable for using a bronchial blocker. I would always avoid bronchial blocker if it's a known case of purulent lung. So we try to use a double lumen tube. And if you still want to use a bronchial blocker, it can be used, but we have to confirm and make sure that each and every step. So first of all, we have to ensure that the lung isolation is well completely done by fiber optic guidance, and we have to, while positioning the patient also, the fiber optic should be kept in situ along with the bronchial blocker, because there may be chance of dislodgement. So what I would suggest is, if you are using a left-sided lung isolation technique by pushing the bronchial blocker to the left mainstem bronchus for a right upper lobe abscess, or maybe like that. So what I would rather do is, since I have got a longer safety of margin, I would push the blocker a bit more inside, nicely isolate the left lung under vision, and obviously I'll keep the fiber optic bronchoscope in place while positioning, so that there should not be any dislodgement of the or malposition of the bronchial blocker. We can still manage, but it's obviously very risky and more cumbersome. You need more hands to manage this kind of case by using a bronchial blocker.
So a double lumen tube, unless contraindicated, is usually more convenient and safer. And in your experience, how much time? Because most of the students who are going through an MD course here do get some experience in placement of a double lumen tube, but I'm not very sure if most of them get an exposure to bronchial blockers. However, bronchial blockers offer certain advantages. So how much experience does one need? I mean, how much practice one needs before one gets proficient with bronchial blockers?
I guess from my experience, when we started using bronchial blocker, but actually using a bronchial blocker is much more easier, and it gives you more confidence once you start using it. The reason, first 2 things I would say is, when you are inserting a double lumen tube, always there is a fear in mind that whether you are causing a airway injury. So that is one prominent thing which is there. And the other thing is, sometimes patients' underlying lung conditions, they may be having a asthmatic patient or a severe COPD which is not well controlled, posted for a thoracic surgery. So usually after insertion, you get a severe spasmodic episode which you need to manage. So those kind of experiences, if you look into it, using a bronchial blocker is much more easier. But the only thing is you get to know the bronchial anatomy. So you need to have two things. One is availability of a pediatric size fiber optic bronchoscope, and more frequently you should be aware of the bronchial anatomy. Otherwise, it is very easy to use a bronchial blocker than a double lumen tube.
Right. And it's also right now possible to practice your bronchoscopy even in the absence of either a cadaver, or there are bronchoscopy workstations.
Yeah, there are.
But virtually you can also practice to figure out where exactly you are, even if you do not have access to a bronchoscope.
Yes. So idea about the bronchial anatomy is must for using a bronchial blocker. Otherwise, there is not much of difficulty in using, because manipulation is just done under guidance. So you are not doing any blind technique when you are using a bronchial blocker. Whereas a double lumen tube, always there is a fear that we are using a more of a blind technique. You always insert it and then you confirm by fiber optic bronchoscopy. Most of the anesthesiologists does that.
Right, that's true. Yes. So I don't think there are any more questions. So let us wrap up for the night. There were some hiccups during the starting period. We had some problems with the link for signing in. So a number of people faced problems. I think some solved it, and for some it still remained a problem. So we'll try to make sure that such problems do not occur in the future. So thank you, Dibendu, for your excellent. Been very, very helpful. So good night, everybody. Let us close the session. Shomu?
Yeah. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.